Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the bell.
Yo, be a father. If not, why bother, son? A boy can make them, but a man can raise one. Be a father to your child. Be a father to your child.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it?
We never know when we officially started.
Yeah, nobody ever wants to like jump in and say something. So, we have shit.
Let me ask you guys, should we every so many episodes, as we hopefully gain new listeners, should we let those listeners know our different fatherhood story, like in short, like whatever? Should that be something we do maybe every few episodes?
Can't hurt.
Yeah, I mean,
or is it just in our story? Isn't it? Is it just in our little whatever blurb?
We can just, essentially, this is Kay. I got one kid. Manny's got 3. E's got 1.
Actually, we probably should do an official intro that does that for us every episode.
Yeah.
Fucking sound like some old people that don't know how to use our technology.
Well, it's not too far off.
When I call my mom on FaceTime, she's got it on her face. Like, that's what time means, Mom.
Oh, man. Yo, we've been doing a lot of podcasting, B. I was just thinking, we got a lot of episodes under our belt. I mean, we're not nowhere near Drink Champs, of course, but we've been doing some pretty consistent work. So,
Right.
It's actually been making me think a lot harder just about my parenting, honestly, which is a good thing, I think. It's almost like I'm gaining more empathy for my child, because I'm just realizing even more that Dan, he's just a kid, man. He's 6 years old, and I can hear myself and it's not like me and my wife are super disciplinarians, but there's just with the kid, or at least a 6-year-old, there's always that chatter of stop, don't do that, don't touch this, blah, blah, blah. And then after a while, I started wondering, like, damn, am I harping on him too damn much? Like, he's just a kid, Like the other day, I was looking at his face, like we were saying something, and he was still. It was not like he was upset, but it was almost like I was hearing myself saying, don't do this, and I was just kind of looking at his eyes, and he was apologetic, and he was saying, but I didn't mean to do it, and then it made me think, like, damn, These kids, man, they're just young. They don't know any better. They're trying to do their best. It's their job to push the envelope a bit as well. Try to get away with whatever they can get away with, and it's our jobs to try to guide them in the right direction. But it's also our jobs to be mindful of and have empathy for them. And it was just making me think, like, man, it's kind of like when you're at a new job or something, you don't know what you're doing, and you're doing some wrong shit, and you kind of feel like an asshole when you mess up or whatever. And I don't know, just
the difference is a life.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You fuck this up, you fuck somebody's life up.
But it's also like how they're feeling, how they must feel. Like, this is they're new on the job, really, being a person.
Right.
And so we got to remember that.
I sympathize because the one episode so far, actually, there's been 2 that have stuck with me, but the one that really has challenged me has been the Cypher for Sounds episode. So how Cypher was talking about how his wife is more strict about like the little things, and he's more the opposite. He kind of just like, yo, so what? We'll clean it up if they make a mess or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And I mentioned that on the episode. I'm more like his wife traditionally, and so I'm trying to get more closer to what Cypher alluded to that he is in my day-to-day with my kids, because I do find myself nitpicking a lot. My wife says this all the time. Like, I'll constantly be like, yo, we talked about this already, stop doing that, right? But I give enough runway, so it's not like I'm a Nazi about it, like, you did it, But I try to
don't you get sick of hearing yourself? I get sick of hearing myself do that shit.
See, I'm not at that stage, so I wouldn't know yet.
I do. It's really annoying. And if so, what sucks is I get uber frustrated about it, and then I lash out on them instead of shutting the fuck up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm afraid of. Like, you getting frustrated so much about something has nothing to do with them, or it does. It's just you, like the way you interact with them, that you lash out at the child because really you're just frustrated with yourself more than anything.
Yeah.
But I think based on what you're saying, Kay, obviously there's no wrong or right way. Anybody that I kind of respect has told me there's no wrong or right way, you know, and there's no handbook to parenting. But I do think that balance at the end of the day is, you know, is probably the best place to be. You know, you got to have a certain amount of discipline, and you got to have a certain amount of, you know, looseness to it. Like I feel like in my Gemini-ness, I can do that. You know, like I feel like I'm very uber, like I want to organize and clean, but then like there's another side of me that clicks that I'm just like, buck wild, let's play, you know, I act like a fool with my child, jump on the floor, let's get dirty. And then when it's time to probably clean it up or whatever, you want to make sure they come away with being able to have fun, and then know that when that's over, it's time to like clean up or fix things and organize. Because in the long run, we would think that those are the type of things that are going to make them better adults. You know, I mean, I guess if that's what you want to teach your kids, maybe you want to teach your kids to be something else.
Right. Or there's plenty of people who don't teach their kids any of that shit. And
yeah, I mean, whatever. Maybe
people running wild, I guess.
Fucking, yeah, you want to be a wild banshee with your fucking no shoes on, running around chancletera in Walmart. No bra on.
Pata sucia. that scares the shit out of me, because my youngest daughter, she'll start like gyrating and shit, and I'll be looking at her like,
what do you mean?
Like, you know, just doing shit that is
like dancing, gyrating.
Like, yeah, but
just like can't control her body type. Just got to move, right?
But it
like
looks like on some like strip club type shit, like
oh, no.
You know what I'm saying? Like the beginning, like it could be the foundational movements. You know what I'm saying?
Early twerk.
Yeah, and I'm like, shit.
Are you breaking up, E?
You breaking up too. That's what I was trying to.
You know what happens?
It's probably my connection. If Manny doesn't hear it, it's probably my connection.
Nah, it's that when all three of us talk at the same time, and she just goes, yeah.
From on our ass. All right, that's true.
So it scares me, because I know she gets it from like probably watching TV or whatever, and screen time is like a humongous issue for us, right? We succumb to utilizing screens as the babysitter. Like we make no bones about it. Like that is our ability to have some sort of refuge to go clean the house or do whatever we gotta do, because the little girl needs to be attended to the entire day. So she's picking up all these different things, and I think she's picking up like, you know, dancing like that from this shit. And I'm like, we got to put a stop to this shit, because I don't know where this shit's going to take her. It's all innocent now, but who knows where it goes.
Have you guys seen the story? I saw it on CNN that there's I don't know if it's an organization or a dude, but they're trying to tackle, they're trying to create laws from the government that will, what's the word I'm looking for, man? What's laws? Like they're trying to deal with social media the same way big tobacco was dealt with.
Oh,
they're trying to say it's the same danger. So they're trying to regulate. That's the word I was looking for. They're trying to get the government to regulate. And, you know, in the past, you know, all of us who grew up in you know, the internet age or whatever, it was always, you know, we've always felt like the internet is free. It's an open society. You know, it should never be regulated. But now, man, we're starting to see the effects of kids who just grew up in this internet age and social media age. And I'm starting to kind of agree, like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if the government would do the right job, but the way that the dude was talking about how it's like the same way we realized that tobacco was targeting kids, was doing certain things, you know, and then was really bad for them.
Right.
You know, is the way we need to look at social media. And I think he's kind of right.
That was Mark Benioff from the CEO of Salesforce on CNN, I think, right?
Your cousin?
He's a long lost brother that owes
that
me.
Name at your back pocket, like you just spoke to homie.
Nah, I saw what you were talking about.
He lives next door to me. We just had coffee.
That's my cousin Mark Benioff.
I just liked his new picture on Facebook, by the way.
Now, when I saw the headline on CNN, I kind of jumped up a little bit just because,
So you saw the same thing I saw?
Yeah, I think so. Today I saw it, and my background being somebody who's worked in the ad tech industry, I have a different perspective about how technology feeds into society, and I'm usually pretty for it. But some of the points that he made, I agree with, because, I mean, particularly around privacy, he said something about the European Union and how they have these very conservative laws around privacy that we fall really short of here in the U.S. And not to take us too far away from what the core of what we talk about is, he makes some valid points, because we rely so heavily on technology, and every day there's a new technology that's utilized in a different manner that has the ability to impact our freedoms as we see them in a very profound way. So having oversight is, I think, important. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to have people in government play that role to an extent, because they're very traditional in their thinking. So to me, it's like the counterbalance of the technologists who are very, opposite in the way they think. So it might lead to some sort of balance, having the two polar opposites kind of try to figure out a way to police the thing.
And not to veer too much off the topic of this affecting our children, but I think the idea that people think that hinders their freedom is a generation that doesn't understand that they are being always corralled by these technologies that they don't even understand, that are constantly, getting ahead of themselves, these technologies, where sometimes I think like the people who created this technology from yesterday don't understand the technology from tomorrow. And so I think that we, whatever, it's obviously it's a Pandora's box of conversation, but I think it's something that should be regulated, and I think will affect all of our children, heavily, if not already.
I think we need to bring in some sage advice here. So let's bring in our guest, the OG Bun B.
Hell yeah! What's up, Bun?
What up, you got? What up, BFN? What's up, baby?
What's going on, man?
Man, I can't call it.
For those that don't know Bun B, then you got a big problem.
Then turn this shit off and go somewhere else. So Bun,
right.
you got 2 kids, is that right?
Yeah, we have 2 kids and 4 grandkids.
And 4 grandkids. Yo.
Yeah.
All right. And how old are your kids?
30 and 31.
Oh wow.
Damn,
So
you got to work early, my friend.
Yeah. Now this is my wife's kids. We married. My wife already had 2 kids.
Cool.
So I pretty much raised them their entire life.
So when were you introduced to them? Like, at what age was it that you walked into their lives?
That's a good question. I am 45 now, so it would have been about 22 years ago.
And then how's the dynamic? I've always been curious what the dynamic is between raising your kids and then being a part of grandkids. Like, what's the different dynamic there for you?
It's a lot harder to say no to a grandkid than it is your Like, you can shut your kids down all day, but there's a different dynamic with grandma and grandpa. It's a different level of endearment, I think, in the relationship. Because you're not necessarily you can be a disciplinarian, but you're not the primary parent in terms of discipline and stuff like that. So you can have a little leeway with some stuff, whereas a parent would be like, no, not at all. So a parent could be like, I don't want them having candy. I don't want them having soda. I don't want them having sugar. And as a parent, you're like, yeah, okay, well, we're not going to let the kids do that. But as a grandparent, your whole thing is to spoil them and kind of give them things that they don't normally get. So that can become, it doesn't become a problem, but it becomes a whole thing like, look, I know y'all going to do this and do that. Please don't let her do this, because when it gets back to me, like, it's a whole different level of explanation, Because we give them all the sugar and then drop them off, and they're all hyped up, and the parents can't do what they need to do to get through the day.
My mother always says, so Bun, this is Manny Digital. I have 3 children, and my mom always says, not like shitting on me necessarily, but like she wishes she had her grandkids before she had her kids, because the adoration she feels for her grandchildren is a very different one than she's felt for her children. And I don't take it like "fuck you, kid, I don't like you." It's more like there's just a whole different level of love that she's feeling, and it sounds like you see that in your own world as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I know for my wife, it's, my wife gets to notice little things that as the grandchildren are growing up in their very early formative years, we're talking maybe between 1 and 5. My wife can see little things in our grandkids that our kids would do, You can see different mannerisms, like who's a good sport, who's a bad sport, that type of thing, what kind of snacks they're privy to, what things they're scared of in this world, that kind of stuff. You can see that in the grandkids. So it's a different, and again, there isn't that urgency that, say, a young parent would have. Because when you're a young parent and you have children, you don't really know a lot of things and you're learning a lot of things. When you're a grandparent, you know it all up and down. So it's a different, like I said, it's not like you're raising your own kids where you're trying to figure out when do they need to be fed, when those kind of little things that you're trying to figure out as a parent, when they cry, what does it mean? Do I need to go to the doctor every time? That kind of stuff. And grandparents is like, no, it's not that serious. It'll be fine.
Bun, I'm the new. This is EFM, by the way. I'm the new father of the crew here. I have my daughter's 7 months, and
congratulations.
Thank you, brother. And one of the things that we're always talking about on this podcast is, do you shelter? Did you shelter your kids and now your grandkids from the culture, the music, the stuff that you're involved in, your business? Like, what levels of, if you do you shelter them from the music, or do you filter it?
Yeah, you definitely, it's hard to shelter them completely from music. So you try to filter as much as possible, and you try to monitor the input, what it is that they're listening to, where their influences, and that kind of thing. But then once kids get off to school and mix with other kids, it's a little harder to handle that kind of stuff. But, you definitely want to, shelter, I think, is the wrong word, I think, because, there's only so much of the outside world you can keep them away from.
So filter maybe is a better word.
I think filter is the better word for it, because it's not like you're not letting them listen to music. You're just being careful about what music they listen to. And it's not like you're not letting them watch television. You're just being careful of what television they watch. So it's really about filtering the content from the kids. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. As a parent, you have the right to decide what it is you want your children to be into.
Right. What about your own content, the stuff that you were creating? Like, for example, I'm starting to think of my daughter growing up watching Drink Champs and saying, well, Dad, you was an alcoholic. You know what I'm saying? So. Yeah, no, I mean, it's because, you know how you were, what you could handle when you were young, what you couldn't handle. And you just have to, give your kids an opportunity, a chance to not be scarred for life, so to speak. A lot of my content is very hardcore. My granddaughter hasn't heard a lot of the music I make. She may have heard a couple of songs on radio, and she'll only come to like a radio show or festival where we're not really doing like all the dirty versions of everything. Right.
But yeah, you don't want to expose them to anything too fast. Just because it's it's really easy to be like, well, you don't say that stuff. But they see you say it, and they see you use those kind of words, and it's just like drinking and smoking and all that kind of stuff. With kids, you have to be careful.
Hey, Bun, how aware were your kids when they were growing up of who you were and kind of your status as an artist? I mean, did they kind of look up to you in a sense that they knew you were Bun B, or were they kind of disconnected from that?
No, I mean, they knew who I was, but my kids were always more excited about other people's music than necessarily my music.
Got it.
That's kind of
the way
how
it usually goes.
Yeah. Like you got all like Michael Jordan's kids wasn't really feeling Michael Jordan type of thing. Like,
and what was
you want to be careful, about like I said, about exposing them and stuff. And then they don't, they like, I make songs with Jay-Z, but my kids don't look at me like Jay-Z. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Kids have their own fans, right? Kids' relationship with their parents and the kids' relationship with who they look up to as a musician and who they're into. It's a big difference, If I'm at home, I'm sitting around on the sofa in my underwear kind of thing, watching TV. They see more of that than they see big stages and performances and stuff like that. And like I said, these kids usually they want to see the other people as opposed to me. They're not really tripping on me.
Right. What was your take on discipline with when your wife raising your kids? We've been kind of talking about different things with different folks, and just for us, we're just learning different ways and trying to share that with other people. What was your take on disciplining kids?
Well, my wife is the disciplinarian because, like I said, as a step parent, you don't want to get in the way of that kind of stuff. We have different ways of looking at situations and how we feel we should discipline situations. But when it comes to actual like physical reprimand, my wife was always the one with that, because if my kids needed, harsh words and that kind of thing, I could definitely do that type of stuff. But as far as like, putting your hands on the kids, the belt for some, for some parents or whatever it is you choose to do, whatever kind of corporal punishment you want to do. Like I said, I let my wife do all of that stuff. I didn't get in the way of that because my wife had already had her way of disciplining and keeping her kids in line before I got there. So I didn't necessarily see the need or feel the need to get involved with that.
We were talking,
but kids need their ass whooped. I have friends that don't believe that. Like Talib Kweli is a really good friend of mine, but Talib Kweli doesn't whoop his children. And he actually looks at it as abuse when you do whoop your children.
Right.
So it's like I said, it depends a lot on the way you were raised and
I was raised with
what you know about. Well, yeah, and then you know who you are. You know how you are. You know what discipline was necessary to keep you in line. And so, some people are not opposed to issuing that same kind of discipline to their children to keep them in line.
All right.
Bun, are you still a lecturer at Rice University?
I am. Officially, I didn't teach this year.
Okay. And how's that?
Because we were dropping a new album.
Oh, okay. So you're
returning to Trill in stores now. Sorry.
Yes. No. Wait. You got to say that one more time because I was interrupting you. Please say it one more time.
Oh yeah. Returning to Trill, new album out right now, all formats, all platforms.
Yes. So that dynamic, you obviously being maybe not a paternal figure to a lot of those students, but an authority figure to an extent, just based on your legacy. How is that dynamic when you're speaking to those kids? Like, what's the content that you're distributing to them? And I'm assuming there's a variety of things in that capacity.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about different forms of religion that are practiced in the world, primarily in America, but then also throughout the world. And how that instills discipline in people, makes them a better person, makes them want to do the right thing in life, contribute to society. For some people, religion doesn't do that, though. Based off their connection with religion, how they were raised within the religion, how they looked at the religion as an adult as opposed to how they were told to look at it as a child. And so people started looking and pulling from different places in their life to make them become a better person, answer the, bigger questions of life. Who are we? Why are we here? What is our purpose? That kind of thing. And so for some people, hip hop makes them want to be a better person. Hip hop as a culture makes them want to be more contributive to society and, make their best effort as a human being while they have this time on this planet. And so we talk about that. So when we talk about my class is, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. My class is about religion and hip hop, but it's not a music course. It's more of a religious studies course.
Right.
So it's not in the music department. So music isn't the primary lesson that we're teaching. The primary lesson is about defining religion, how it fits for some people, how it doesn't. Defining music in America from the Negro spirituals up until, today with hip hop and all these different genres of music that we have, and how these things are forms of expression, how people tend to let the world know where they stand, how they feel, who they who they want to commune with, who they want to be around, and what kind of world they want to live in. And for, like I said, for some people, hip hop as a culture does a better job of informing them of these things than religion does as a practice.
Do you think hip hop has the attributes of religion to a degree?
Well, but like in my class, we define religion as the search for complex subjectivity. So again, religion is based on what it is that helps you define, yourself as a person. Like I said, the questions of life that you're trying to answer.
Right.
You're finding out your purpose, your place in this world. And for some people, like I said, some people could be raised in a very religious home, but not connect with the religion, not connect with the practices based on how the religion was used, right? If you're raised in a house with Christianity, but Christianity is being used to, like say in a white supremacist world, Christianity is being used to prove that white people are better than every other people in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So for some people, they may not want to live in a world like that. So they may have an aversion to Christianity just based on who define themselves as a Christian in their lives.
Yeah, it's
right?
perverted.
Right, exactly. So, same thing with, a Muslim extremist or something like that.
Or Catholicism with what's going on with the priests and the molestation.
Absolutely. So a lot of people don't have the positive connection with religion or religious practices as everyone else has. So for those reasons, they start to look in this world and find other things that they could be a part of that gives them ritual practices and whatnot to make them want to be a good person or make them even feel good about themselves or feel good about being a part of this human story that we tell on this planet.
I think that's deep as we got in fatherhood so far.
Because some people are raised Christian and or raised Catholic and feel like, well, I think Judaism speaks better than me, or I think being a Protestant or being a Methodist or one of these different sects of Christianity makes them feel better about the connection they're trying to have with a higher power.
Or they're turned off completely and become atheists.
Yeah, you could become an atheist or an agnostic. The person that I teach the class with, Dr. Anthony Penn at Rice University, who's, one of the highest ranking professors on campus and who teaches a class out of the religious studies building, doesn't necessarily believe in a God. So it's been very interesting to teach a course on religion with someone who understands the practices, has a deep knowledge of where they started, what their intended purposes are, what they are now, and just feels like that's not what I need to do or to follow or practice to make myself a better person or make myself, a good person in this world.
You being in the hip hop game for so long, you've seen a number of rapper generations, come and go. How have you perceived fatherhood to be across the span of, your hip hop career so far? Because one of the things that kind of put this podcast into action was the fact that particularly people in hip hop culture, they get a black eye when it comes to being stand-up fathers or being present as fathers.
Or they used to, if anything.
Right.
Starting to change.
Yeah, and we're seeing a change now kind of just in the industry, but, in and around the industry generally. What's your take on it so far?
Well, I think that's a big misconception. I think there are a lot of guys inside hip-hop, the culture, who have always been great parents. They've just, it's just never been a part of their career that they necessarily shared. Guys like Run DMC, and LL Cool J, and some of the earliest members of hip hop culture.
It's true.
Are great fathers, great parents, who love their kids and spend a lot of time. But I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're all good.
I think there's always been great fathers. It just seems, and this is actually even entertainment wise across the board. People were always either hiding their family life or not putting, on Front Street that they're in a relationship or have kids. And in hip hop, it just seems more prevalent.
Well, because it's an entertainment period. Right?
Yeah.
It's not just in hip hop. It's an entertainment period, and people are trying to protect their families from sycophants and people who
Right.
take music and stuff a little bit too seriously. People want to, give their children as much of a normal life or as much normalcy in their day-to-day life as possible. And the music industry doesn't always allow that, right? I know a lot of artists who are great parents, but don't feel like that's anything they need to express in their music at their job. Because if you're going to work every day in the office, you're not required to be a good, talk about your children. Let me say, you're not required to talk about your children at work, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times it's frowned upon. So, and when we create these groups and we have these movements in the culture, not necessarily what people want to hear when you're young and you're making music. Now, at my stage in my career, I'm an older person. I've done different things. I've lived a different life. So, I'm not trying to get people to buy into who I am as an artist. I've already done that. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's about sharing other things about life, right? Because my fan base gets older, I get older. We're all dealing with the same things. And so, I try to talk about transitioning, from one place to another in life.
Right, the maturing.
I think that's the kind of stuff and I think it's important for artists to do that and speak on that. But it's only when you get there, right? Because when these artists are younger, when you're young, you think, look, I just need to be working, grinding and getting the money for these kids. Then you get older and the kids tell you, I didn't care about the money and stuff. I just wanted you to be there. So you got to find a balance between being a good provider, giving your family the opportunity that you can give them in life, but then also making sure that they're learning from you directly, not just always from your actions or your words. They need to be able to look at you and see these things happening in your life. The growth, the maturity.
I guess also there wasn't a lot of social media back then where people could put their families on Front Street, and that kind of thing, which is, we were actually having a conversation about this before you jumped on, Bun, about kind of limiting. What was the gist of it, E or Manny, in terms of limiting?
There's a story. What's the guy's name, Manny, that's talking about this?
Mark Benioff, the CEO and founder of Salesforce.
That he's looking at social media the same way, or he wants to tackle it the same way that big tobacco was tackled, and he sees it to be the same negative effects
on kids, right?
On kids, yes, and the generation growing in social media. He wants to bring in regulations. So that we were discussing that.
It's a little different, right? Like I said, were you talking about regulating use of social media, or?
No, just regulating the big companies, the social media companies. But we were just talking in general, like, what do we think the effects of a whole generation of children and our children, per se? So, what is the effects of social media on that?
I don't think we'll even really know for a while.
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed for Bun, because you have older children now. I think we're starting to see those effects are going to be more prevalent in the younger generation that's coming up now.
I was saying, like, with social media, like, one of the aspects of social media is that, like, you look at bullying, right? That we have a lot of with kids right now, and bullying, was bad enough when kids had to deal with it, during the hours of school. So, like, from 8 in the morning to like 3 in the afternoon, kids used to dread like being at school. Well, now the bullying leaves school, and so it's 24 hours.
Yeah.
So you're bullied at school, you're bullied before school online, you're bullied after school online. So those kind of things, that's definitely taking the toll. You see a lot more kids dealing with suicide because of social media bullying and whatnot. I think the introduction to sexuality and sexual practices and all these kind of things have been, obviously just wanting to feel like you need to be sexy or something like that is it's a major part of identity, especially for young girls on social media.
Right.
The idea of what they need to look like, what their body should be shaped like, how they should be making up their face. These are all things that girls are dealing with on a very, very major scale. And, young people are always impressionable. And I think that, if you look at, the Instagram models and different celebrities who, present themselves in a certain way, your face needs to look like this, and your lips need to look like this, and your breasts need to be full, and your butt needs to be big and round, and all these kind of things that could throw a young girl off if she doesn't have it, or push her into a life that she's not ready for if she does have some of this stuff. I think it's scary.
Definitely. So, Bun, today marks a pretty significant day, I know, in UGK history, the death of Pimp C. So, how involved? Not to gloss over that. I mean, that's significant, and I know you do a lot of work along with his family to keep his legacy alive. What is the role or your relationship with his children that he left behind?
Well, I have a decent relationship. I try not to get involved in too many lives because all Pimp's children's mother are different women.
Oh, okay.
And so different people get along in different ways. They're all older now. They all don't live in the same city. So that becomes a situation. But it's really just about, letting them know who their dad really was and what their dad would expect of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
My Pimp's oldest son is, he's a man now. He's a full-grown man. He's in his 20s. And he was old enough to be around his dad for a considerable number of years before his dad passed. The younger kids don't have that kind of time with him, and they have a different set of memories with their father. So, they all came into his life at different times in his life. He was going through different things in his life. So, like his second son was around when he went to jail, but was very young, and so didn't really get to spend those early formative years with his father. His daughter was very young when he went to jail. She was just born. But, so a lot of the years that he was gone, are smaller, younger years that she doesn't really remember like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's not as much of an impression on her brain about her father being gone. Because in her earlier years, that was pretty much all she knew.
Yeah.
Whereas the older children had a different perspective of when he was locked up, based on their age and their perception and their awareness of how the world worked at the time. And so, for us, we just want to make sure that we're honoring the memory right. And like now his middle son wants to be a rapper. And so I just try to tell him to be careful about the content that he decides to use because it's a much different time. And he doesn't need to be presenting himself a certain way just because of who his father is.
Right. Yeah. That's crazy.
That's just too much. It's just too much to live up to.
Yeah.
And, and it never was exactly what he wanted from his kids. Like the music industry and entertainment and all that. His daughter wanted to be in acting. And so he was, supportive of that because he was around. And so he was very supportive of his daughter wanting to be an actor. And like I said, because he could kind of monitor that. And, it's not like she was going to be acting in R-rated movies or anything. So the content and the interaction with people was a lot more different. Now his middle son wants to rap, but this was never something that he was doing while his father was around. And so, it was off-putting for a while, even though it wasn't, the problem wasn't content. The problem was the distraction of thinking that he needed to move a certain way and be a certain place, and them wanting to. His grandmother was very supportive of it, which I wasn't necessarily supportive of it. So it's, to be a kid that was under, 10, 12 years old in nightclubs,
right.
And so I was, which is, it's something that I was not supportive of at the time. But again, like, I'm not the primary caregiver in any way. So it's not for me to decide what people choose to do with the child that they're raising. But, I was concerned about, getting a false perspective of what the music industry is about and having that as a career and whatnot. But it's something that he still wants to do. And now he's coming of age. So I try to be supportive of it as a career move and, to show I'm supporting him. But at the same time, when you start talking about guns and stuff like that, that's not going to work because you're going to put yourself in a position that you don't need to be put in. And there's going to be an assumption of how people need to move or react to what these things that you say based on who you're connected to and who your father may have been, you know.
Man.
So just, you know, a primary job is to love them and support them, but then also be very honest with them, communicate with them, and make sure that they at least know or have some kind of understanding of how maybe their father would have felt about this initially.
Are your kids involved in music at all, or did they have aspirations at all for music?
Yeah, my daughter's a DJ. My son was a recording artist for several years. And that was my thing, like with him, he wanted to be in the music industry. They both wanted to be in the music industry because they thought it would be easy because I was in the music industry and they thought being connected to me, people would just let them do what they wanted to do and that songs would automatically get played and that money would automatically be made. And that was, you know, that was the furthest thing from the truth, you know.
Right.
The reality is that, you know, like when I told my son he wanted to be a rapper, I'm like, look, you're going to get compared to me constantly when you make music, which is not going to be a fair comparison because you don't make the kind of music that I make. Younger people make different music. It's more dance-oriented, party kind of music. We made different music. We made more, you know, street music. And my thing was, you know, I can give you information and help guide you in a certain way, but at some point, you're going to have to do this on your own. Like, can't just give you verses and features because you're never going to learn anything about the hustle. He's going to be trying to get by off of being connected to me. So at some point, you're going to have to go out here and learn how to be your own man when you go to work. Because if you pick any other job in the world, I can't walk you through that. I can't go to work with you. You've got to figure that out. Mm-hmm. You know, you're making kids. You're going to be responsible for those kids. And so you need to, you know, be prepared to, you know, go out and get a good job in case the music stuff doesn't work. Unfortunately, he wasn't lazy, and he did it as long as he felt he could do it, and he realized that it wasn't necessarily for him, and he chose another path. And, you know, you do the best you can with your kids. You're never going to get things right. The kids aren't going to get everything right. And just like I said, you just try to be there and be supportive as you can, and, you know, without allowing them to make, you know, massive missteps in their life.
Man, so
the kids are always going to assume their parents aren't going to support them through it, but you know, you have to have good reasoning. You can't just say, well, no, that's it. No, you have to be able to, you know, thoughtfully explain this kind of stuff because kids are going to try to find some kind of reason to rebel at some point anyway. So you just got to have very real and honest conversations and be like, you know, I don't know if this is necessarily for you. I'll be here, support you as much as I can. But again, if I don't think this is for you, once you got in the world and try to do it, you've got to kind of do it on your own. You got a family. You got, you know, something to fall back on if it doesn't work out, but you're not going to just get it easy. I'm not going to go everywhere. Just be like, hey, my son's a rapper. You guys look out for him. Because then you're going to expect me to do that all the time. And then when things don't happen in the way that they were used to happening, you're going to be confused about this. Like, why aren't people supporting me? And then you'll start to resent my involvement at some point if I pull back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then it's your fault.
I used to do teaching, so as many kids as I've spoken to about music and, you know, have a plan B, they never want to hear that. They never want to hear.
And they think they know what's best for themselves at that point.
Yeah, but you know, I guess we were all like that at some point.
Yeah, we were. Shit, I still.
I mean, you know, my mother didn't want me to. My mother didn't want me to make music. My mother was like, "If this is what you want to do with your life, you can totally do it, but I can't support you because this isn't what I think you need to be doing. I don't think you're ready for this." And so my mother kind of backed all the way out of it. My mother expected me to try it for a year, but I would fall on my face and then I would come back home crying to Mom, but I haven't been home since.
Wow. So Return of the Trill came out what, in September?
Came out August, the last week of August.
August, okay. And that's, you said, available everywhere. Where can people find you on the socials if you want to be found, and kind of drop a line and tell you what they think about the album?
Oh, yeah, they can find me at Bun B, Trill O.G on Twitter. They can find me at Bun B on Instagram and at Bun B of UGK on Facebook. We're out there. We're interacting with people, you know, giving them a place and a space to where they can come and show love. Not everybody shows love, but, you know, it is what it is.
Social media.
Right. But we do want to make ourselves accessible and available to people.
Absolutely.
I've never been a person to keep myself separated from the people.
And any last words of advice for especially the young kids out there raising kids? Anything to follow you could pass on to them?
Yeah, just remember yourself. You know what I'm saying? When you're looking at your kids, remember your vulnerability. Remember your innocence. You know what I'm saying? Remember, your nervousness, your adamancy about things, your hesitance about things. The kids are going to have some of those traits, and then some of them they won't have, because it takes two people to make a child. So they're going to have some of what the father has. They're going to have some of what the mother has. So you have to remember who you were and how you were at certain points in your life, and be smart about what you tell your kids. You can't tell your kids too much about the mistakes you made, I believe, because they'll just use that as excuses and throw that in your face. You know what I'm saying? So you can't always tell your kids everything you did wrong as a child, because they'll literally decide to do that wrong and put it in your face as a reason for you to not be able to criticize them. Right? So you just have to be smart about what you share with your children at certain stages in their life. You can't, and you have to be, careful about what you do in front of your children. You know what I'm saying? If you're smoking weed, the kids see you smoking weed, and then you decide to tell the kids, hey, don't smoke weed, then you sound like a hypocrite, which, that may be. You're still a parent, though. So you just have to be careful about your behavior, what I'm saying, in relation to the child and what you let children see. And, if once you decide that you're going to allow your children to be on social media, then whatever your interests are on social media have to be dialed back, because you have to make sure you're in a position to monitor your children. But if you got this crazy life on Instagram where you got to post stuff and do stuff, you're not going to spend that much time monitoring what the kids do. Even worse than that is, we live in an age now where a lot more parents are more computer literate, but there's still a lot of parents out there who aren't nearly as knowledgeable about the internet as their kids are. And that makes it hard to monitor. If the kids have to remind you what your email password is and, all that kind of stuff, then you're going to have a hard time monitoring what the children do. So you really shouldn't allow your children to use formats and stuff that you aren't privy to and that you aren't well versed in, because you won't know how to, you won't know where the DMs are. You won't know how to find stuff. And, it's just a certain level of knowledge that you need to have about that kind of stuff before you allow your kids to have that stuff. I see a lot of parents letting their kids have social media. They don't understand their pages. Some of them are blocked and don't know it. Some of them, these kids have separate pages. They don't really know how to monitor the activity. And, and then by the time they find out what their kids are really doing online, sometimes it's too late,
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know how to turn on a computer.
Yeah, and just be honest with yourself. I keep telling parents, you have to be honest with yourself. So the only way you can be honest with your kids, you have to be honest with yourself about what your pluses are, what your minuses are, and just be aware. Just be available. Communicate. Talk to your kids, so they don't even want to listen anymore. They keep talking, because to the point where they'll never be able to say you didn't try to tell them.
Wise words from the legend Bun B.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Bun.
Man. Thank you guys, man.
Thank you for coming on our little podcast.
Say what, Bun?
This is an important podcast.
No, it is. It's important to us, So we hope it makes an impact.
That's why I wanted to be a part of it, because I don't, like you guys are saying, I don't think people really get a true sense of parents now. You know what I'm saying? As far as the hip hop culture is concerned, what we care about, what we don't care about. They think a lot of our kids are, we're cursing and smoking and do a bunch of drugs in front of our kids. And I don't think a lot of them know that, many of us, our children are in private schools. You know what I'm saying? That's
right.
Part of the reason we work so hard. We're trying to give our kids a better education, a better shot at education than we have. I think, they think all our kids probably talk like we talk on records. From most families, that isn't true. Most of these children are very intelligent, very proper, very well-mannered, very respectful. And, so it's very easy to look at someone at work, on television or on stage or something like that, and assume what their private life is. But for most people, you would never know what their private life is. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think we owe people that. We don't owe people our wives We don't owe people our children. We don't owe people any of that stuff. Our parents, none of that.
Our
All we
personal
owe people
life.
is
Yeah.
entertainers. Yeah, all we owe people as entertainers are ourselves. That's it.
Right. Appreciate you,
Yo,
man.
thank y'all for having me, man. No, for real. Thank y'all for having me, for real. Y'all, much continues to say.
Hope you'll come back too.
If it's necessary. I'll be back. My son's gonna have another grandkid soon. I'm sure. He just got engaged, so I'm sure he's gonna have another. He's gonna have another kid soon. So I'll come back and pop on talk about grandkid number 5.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right, Bun. Appreciate you, man.
Peace.
Thank y'all, man. Have a
Thank you,
good one.
man.
Peace.
You too, man. Have a good night.
Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the bell.